I know teachers right now are into their 40s who are still paying college loans off.
The people that aren't in education complain about what we're not doing in education. You're like, all right, so the people that are doing cool stuff, you almost have borderline a moral obligation to say, all right, this is what I'm doing then.
Let me ask you a very quick question. Is it easier to get a passport than it is to substitute teach?
Yep. Like, be lazy. Well, if I'm training people to be teachers, be lazy. Yeah, shut up and let them do it.
There's two emotions that I straddle, right? Is hope and worry. So I'm worried to death about kids, but I'm super hopeful about the future.
Education wants the instant gratification. They want the weeds. They don't want the trees.
CTE is coming gangbusters for the traditional, practitioners who don't want to even entertain moving things around for the sake of efficacy.
Do we need as much time as we need to do school?
I mean, if you're asking a 14-year-old, they're going to tell you a weekend will be fine. But no, I want to challenge kids.
If you're about to listen to this podcast, buckle up.
You're listening to the Disrupt Education Podcast. Here are your hosts, Peter Hostrauser and Ali Dahl.
All right, welcome to the Disrupt Education Podcast. I'm Peter Hostrauser. We have Ali Dahl here. Ali, what's happening?
Well, we are, getting into, it's still like a continuation of the series we were doing with young people, but we're really, exploring innovators in education and those who are like on the ground, connecting education to the community and everything. And we have a guest today that I want to lead with this. They reached out to us.
Yep.
We have a form on our website like, hey, I want to be a guest. I'm doing cool things in education. Hey, guess what? We read those. We do have guests on who reach out to us, and we always get excited when we hear them, read them. We can't possibly know everything that's going on. There's like 300 million plus people in America. I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of schools, but we love learning about projects like this and knew this was a fit instantly upon reading it. And so I'm really excited for this week's guest.
Yeah, absolutely. This does run right into just breaking down walls and rebuilding new ones. And, before we give this gentleman an introduction, I do want to, he put something into, we always ask, why do you want to be on the Disrupt Education Podcast? And I thought something that really struck us was just stop tweaking old models and start designing new ones. And that's disrupting education. Dr. Gary Skeen is here with us. He is the Associate Director of the ODU Center for Educational Innovation and Opportunity. He leads the development of Virginia's college partnership lab schools. Dr. Skeen, or do I call you G-Man? Gary, what do
You can call me Gary. That is fine. And thank you all so much for having me on today. I'm super excited to be here.
Absolutely. Well, we'll start here then. That was a very brief introduction. Can you kind of give the story of who you are, and then we'll dive a little bit deeper into how you are breaking away from traditional models and rebuilding new ones?
Yeah, just a little bit about my background. I was an educator for many years. This is my 15th year in public education. I started out in the coal fields of Appalachia, if you can believe it, and I was a band director for many, many years. So then moved from the coal fields to the coast of Virginia, worked on some degrees, and now I'm now involved in this new innovative project with Old Dominion University as part of Virginia's College Partnership Lab School Network. Those are either opened this year or are opening. We're opening 9 additional schools in the fall, so they are on the way. They've been in development for a little while, but all about innovation, all about how we can connect workforce directly into the classroom, and really it's about how can we take these new and innovative ideas and approaches and develop them and study them and determine not what's the best practice, but what's the next practice that we're going to look at, so that we can start to really push those out and make those scalable for everyone across the Commonwealth and across the state of Virginia, and then be that national model for innovation and education to really make sure that we're making that new system.
I love that. The next, not the best. That's killer. That one's probably going to be on one of our quotes that go out on LinkedIn and whatnot. Ali, I got to tell you, and again, Gary, this is great. You're not the first band director, but I really believe that number one, y'all are the hardest working people in education because it's ridiculous amount of hours that you put in. But I think you make great leaders. I don't know, Allie, what do you think?
I definitely think band directors are they're like the quiet, loud leader, right? You have to like you have to really work with a lot of different, talents, and get them all to buy in. But then like you're such a like light beacon of the school and like making all this wonderful music and in the community. And like when you think about going to community events that are partnered with the school, you think of the band being there. I
Yep.
do.
Yeah.
So that's so fun.
Well, band is really community, and that's really what education's about. So I think when you're in music, you really understand how entities work together. And I will tell you, just as the researcher within me, I do find it fascinating that a lot of band directors become really great leaders. I think there should be a study on that if there's not been already.
Mhm.
So that's a sidebar for my own self. So
Anybody out there looking for your PhD right now? There's one.
Yeah. So, okay, this lab school network and your work at ODU, like, how did it start? Like, because like, let's just start there because it seems like a completely different way to do education. And I'd love to know, like, how did this even come to be?
yeah, and that's a great question. We get asked that a lot. Now, I mean, so just to really think about this, when you hear the term lab schools are not new. Lab schools have been around for 100 years. That was really brought forth by Dewey. That was really, that model that was really at higher ed, where higher ed was really testing things out. What Virginia's done, they created legislation just a few years ago to put money in the budget to create this incubator. But what we've done with it is, instead of saying let's do just higher ed, let's test things at the higher ed level and have students be part of this, if their parents want to. These are embedded as public schools. This is open to everybody throughout the Commonwealth. They're public schools. They're free to anyone that's involved with it. And we took the data from different sectors in Virginia to determine, what are the workforce development needs that we have now? What are those industries in the future that we're gonna need that workforce for? And then we develop schools throughout the Commonwealth. There's 15 that are located throughout the entire state that are part of the network to really invest in the workforce of the future based on where those trends were going. So it's really, an investment not in just students and learning in public schools, but it's an investment in communities. It's an investment in the workforce of the future, and it really lets Virginia as a whole really lead the nation in how we are, attracting businesses, how we're saying we're developing your workforce for you, and it's coming to you from the public school. It's not coming to you from the private sector or from something that students are having to pay for. We're investing in this for everybody in these small schools and then scaling those ideas out to everyone. So that's free and readily available across the state.
That my mind is blown because I'm like in a traditional school. We're innovating and we are tweaking. What does that look like? Do you have any like start with like maybe a story of a school that you have developed around a need now and or a future need? What does that look like? How does that even start? Do you like here's land, here's people? What does that look like?
Yeah, so I'll kind of use I have I think almost the perfect one that I can kind of use for you that's directly within our network. First, the way that it took us a little bit of time to wrap our brains around what these were too, and really we kind of settled in this world of our lab schools are incubators of innovation. So really developing that mindset and that terminology, knowing that we want to not just tweak on the outskirts, but we're developing new things, but we have to start somewhere and it has to start small so it can spread. The story that I always like to really talk about is, I don't know if this is common knowledge, but Virginia is really invested in the space industry and the aerospace industry with NASA Wallops Flight Facility located directly on Virginia's eastern shore. And it's a more rural area. It's a more not as populated area. But the workforce in that industry is aging. It's growing older. It's becoming a bit more. We're at retirement age, and there's not those people that are able to come in and fill those roles. So it was strategically positioned that we would create the Aerospace Academy on the Eastern Shore. That's not just on the fringes of learning about what students need to know if they want to go into NASA. It's developing them so that they can be aerospace engineers. There's cybersecurity that's attached to it. All of the different jobs. Our director for the Aerospace Academy says, people think aerospace, they automatically just think out in space, but it's really aerospace is anything that's 6 feet off the ground. So that's a whole opens the whole world to drones, to everything that's involved with that. So strategically, we invite, it's not just people that are, developed curriculum writers and leaders that are developing the curriculum work. We have teams from NASA Waltz that are directly like in communication with how we develop what students are going to learn every day. What do they need to know? They're part of that advisory team that's really writing the curriculum, and it's not people that are on the outsides, just as experts in education, but as the experts within the field too. Because I think if you don't know what the experts in the field need to know, you're not going to develop the learning, on the daily basis that students are going to need as they're moving forward to go into those roles. But Aerospace Academy, I think that's my favorite example. That's our space school, if you will. So
Yeah.
I want to go there.
Yeah,
That sounds
right.
so
That sounds awesome.
This is completely in alignment with what we just heard from our young people from the summer series, and they really talked about how they wanted to find places that align with their values, but then like also is like in their community. And knowing that earlier, sooner, faster, having it be more integrated was a need that we're seeing. And so trying to find organizations and school districts or higher ed, whatever kind of institution that is directly trying to partner with communities and look at what does this community need and how do we develop a pipeline for that, because otherwise, right, like that rural town may or may not exist if you don't get more people to move there, work there. Like there's this idea of building a community around what is already there, like because it'd just be like so much loss. So I'm curious, like how does, like, besides the aerospace
yeah.
school, the space school, like how do you look for good fits, or how did you pick schools or areas in Virginia to kind of like start this work?
Yeah, and that's great. And I think what's wonderful about this is that I'll give you two examples. One is in my current home, and one is in my forever home where I was born and raised on the other side of the state. So, aerospace is really big on the Eastern Shore. I'm in coastal Virginia. Coastal Virginia has the Port of Virginia, which is the largest East Coast port on the Eastern Seaboard. There's a big need for, everything, just, not only trades, but leaders in the maritime industry. So we strategically partnered a school that's directly like just down the street from the Port of Virginia. That's the Maritime Academy and Environmental Studies Academy. So they're coming out of that with those maritime trades and skills, but not only the maritime, but also the environmental, so that we're making those sustainable in the future too. So we're thinking about, the ecosystem, the whole picture all around. So strategically, that was picked there. I'll use the other side of the state as kind of my favorite. My mom will love this if she listens to this too, because she's in healthcare. I come from rural Virginia. It's a side of the state that there's not a lot of access to healthcare. There's, waning population of nurses, doctors, et cetera. So now there's a strategically placed Southwest HEALS program, which is Health Science and Excellence Academy. Lab School, I think, is their total acronym. They're part of our network too, but I always get the E wrong, and they'll probably know that. But totally dedicated, full of their high school hands-on experiences where they're going in. They have an internship. One of the students got to go in and watch a C-section and be part of that in the school. And the student was like, one of them loved it. One of them was like, I don't know if I can do that ever in my life again. But it's building that capacity and the need on the other side of the state, because there's, a need in healthcare. So it was really, we've got a whole state database that really shows us where the economic indicators lie. So it was really going through that database and saying, what do we need? What does each region need? And what's the development going to look like? And then, that becomes kind of a piece that we can talk about with people too. Part of our network is that we're STEM focused. We've got 4 ODU specific lab schools. It's a full K-12 pipeline. We've got a STEM academy that's right next door to us. That's K-5. We've got a cybersecurity computer science academy that's a middle school, and then we've got 2 high schools, the Maritime Academy and the Aerospace Academy. So if you really think that's a whole network, K-5, not K5, K-12
Mhm.
for the entire STEM industry. So it really lets, our region and the state as a whole leverage themselves and say, hey, we're the STEM capital of the East Coast. You want to be part of this network because we're building your pipeline all across the state. And just to kind of add on to that a little bit too, you know, a lot of times in education we work in silos. It's us working by ourselves, or just kind of as you opened with, there's a lot of independent programs, there's a lot of people that are working on things that you just don't know about. When you're working in a network together, you get to feed off of each other. And then
Mhm.
we've got the development. My part is I'm at the Center for Educational Innovation and Opportunity. That's kind of the hub of all of these schools to make sure that we're the connective tissue that's bringing everybody in. We created our own design thinking framework that we, now lead professional learning with all of our teams here and then all the teams across the Commonwealth. When there's a learning need, we're able to leverage each other across all of the network to bring them in so that we're all learning together and we're kind of sharing those ideas across, and it's not a siloed effect.
Yeah. Oh, so you mentioned K through 12. You mentioned a little bit about like K5, the STEM academies and all these different areas. So yeah, can you walk us through like we could take healthcare, we could take aerospace, we can go to another one and kind of walk us through what does a program look like? Is it, because as a traditional educator, like I work for a traditional district, right? Public school, there are state things you have to checkbox, right? The educational, whatever the group is, the Board of Ed for each state has, you got to go through this and math and science and blah blah blah, all those different things. What's different? Like, give us a juice on maybe a path of a K through 12 student, or maybe just a high school student. That okay, yeah. How do you navigate what the state says you have to do and these really highly specialized areas? Because I love that. I geek out about that because there's different ways to tie in those things. But I'm gonna let you kind of share that magic.
Oh yeah, and that's a great question because it's something that we've had to learn to navigate as well. We're public schools, so we are held to the same accountability that everyone in the state is held to, because it's part of the network. It's an investment from the state.
Mhm.
On the other side of that, the state has given us the leeway to try these things out. When we talk about it, there's terms that lots of educators kind of throw out, flexible seating, flexible this, flexible scheduling. So we actually have the ability to try that out. If it works in our schools, then that's something that not only becomes part of the lexicon of the state, but then, there's discussion on how do we make that policy because now we have the research to back that up. So we've got a couple of different models where we've got flexible seat time in our high schools that we're trying out, we're navigating. The key with this, and I think the key with where innovation sometimes starts to flounder is that we all have great ideas and they're
Hmm.
all wonderful and they are great and we want to just go on and get them done. You have to have the data and the research to back it up. So I think that, really looking at these schools as incubators of innovation, you know, we're able to go in and say, hey, let's try this, then let's evaluate it. Let's meaningfully look at the data. Let's really study it. Let's see if there's a difference in it. And if there's not, then we can't call that a next practice. That we can't call that something that we need to do, or we need to take it back to the drawing board and retweak it. Again, that's kind of where that design theory comes. I mean, not design theory, design
Thinking.
thinking comes from.
Mhm.
Is that we're trying to rapidly prototype these ideas so that we can exponentially get those to come out, not just in the daily life of education, but and a complete policy shift on what education should look like. So really that research component is something that I think is missing. And I think that's something that's been so helpful with us as we're starting to navigate getting these schools out. The seat time flexibility was a big one.
Yeah.
And now that's something that's going, is in talks in some of these legislative bodies and sessions about how can we really navigate that to make sure that we're creating the right systems for everyone in Virginia.
So I got two follow-up quick questions here, Ellie. Like, so research and data, love it and hate it at the same time,
Me
right?
too.
So it's a hate-love relationship with those two. Um, First question is like when you're innovating and you're creating something sort of new, pretty new, how do you find research on something like that, or do you create your own? And my second question is, so what's the data like? How long do you have to collect data for before you're like, hey, you know what? Here's the state of Virginia. Here you go. This is what happened over a certain amount of time. So yeah, how do you kind of extract that?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think that hits to my heart as a researcher on the inside too. It can't you can't just look at past research and education,
Mhm.
systems and organizations and lots of different there's lots of different concepts and ideas that really can feed into what this could look like, what the institution could look like, what legitimacy in that looks like, and it's really breaking down, is this something that we're holding on to because it's legitimate, or is it something that we're moving it, like we need to move away from, where's that through line? So I think lots of reading. I read lots and lots, I think, all the time, trying to develop, what my theories of action would be, what our of action would be across our network, and then just scaling that out. And I think I answered all of your questions on that. But if not,
Yeah.
just let me.
And well, I mean, the data run, like how far, like, is it data like traditionally it would be like, okay, we're going to take a semester data and then take a look at that. What does that look
Yeah,
like?
and I think that that's dependent upon what you're studying too.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
mean, are you looking at things in a qualitative way? Are you looking at things in a quantitative way? What's going to resonate the most? Some of the stuff that I've kind of been looking at lately is, you know, uh, economic investment, for every student that we have coming in and is going through this pipeline, it's $1.2 billion in overall economic investment in the
Hmm.
region that they live in.
Hmm.
So, that's something that's going to drive things home, but they have to be in the programs to really start to think. And I do kind of want to add, because I don't know that I said this, but, the driving question that we ask ourselves every day, because I will tell you that it is a trap when you say, let's innovate, let's do new things. You think you're doing new things, and it's just something that's renamed, and it's not necessarily different.
Well,
So
you know
every time,
education well.
well, I have done it for a while. I think one of the things that drives us is that the first question that anybody in our team always asks when there's something that's proposed is, how is this different? And if you can't articulate how that's different, is it really different?
Mm.
Am I saying that we have all the answers for everything? No. But we're moving it forward in the right direction, and I think that's how you innovate. You innovate in those tiny little experiments, and tiny little movements really make a big mountain.
Love that quote.
Mm,
Thank you for sharing that.
so good. So one of the there's a lot. What's it? So much that I wanted to ask you about. One of them though, based on kind of what you're sharing with, this real-time R&D. That's something that you kind of wrote, and that's what it sounds like you're describing here with, making these changes. But like, how do you then take this real-time R&D, research and development with kids, and then like use it to align with what you need to do in public education to say, yes, this student has met the requirements for K through 12 and they get their high school diploma and they're ready to go to their next step in, whatever they're working towards in their lab schools. Like, how does all of that come together, right? Because it's like a bit, you're talking like it's really seems like, oh, small things, but it's really like a big thing that you're ultimately packaging. And like, talk us through a little bit of how that like looks.
Yeah, and know that it's not me alone, and we don't have a large team, but I mean, we have a mighty team, and we have, the team that I work with, I'm blessed with every day because they're really invested in what this looks like to make sure that it looks different. It takes people looking at what those requirements are, what those standards of learning are, what those, measures are that the state needs, and seeing how does that creatively look in a different way. How do we measure it in a different way? How can we make it more of a project based? How can we make this hands on so that we can show that the student knows the skill, but they're still able to really get that active learning, hands-on learning, but they're able to look at, this is the skill, but we did it in this way. So having that ability to kind of scale that up has been something that's been, and I'm not going to tell you that it's easy. It's, it's a
No.
challenge. It's a mindset shift to think you can do multiple things at one time. You can walk and chew gum at the same time, or or more things. Just really trying to make sure that we are efficient in the way that we are thinking about things. We're really creative in how we think about things. And I really, this isn't my favorite word, but this is really the word that really rings true here, is that we're intentional about how we place things together. So it's really thinking outside of the box. And it's really making sure that we're strategically placing those standards exactly where they need to go so that we can generate something that's really meaningful and powerful for all students.
I do have so
Go
one of
ahead. I know you got a lot of questions.
things,
So
one of the cool things that I'm hearing from you is that it seems like you have a lot of vertical alignment that many states do not have, right? So you not only do you, it seems like you have a group of K through 12 schools that are like, yes, we're willing to innovate and, throw the old models, to the side and like just do what you think is new and better. But you have the higher ed, and higher ed specialty is research. Like, right? Like you want to go into higher ed, you really want to like basically have a lab to play in. So like why not make the lab the K through 12
Exactly.
system? And then I'm hearing, right, you've got you've got the workforce and industry involved. So you've got communities and you have policymakers all coming together. How did that even happen? Like, how did you get that alignment?
Yeah. So, I mean, again, going back to that great team, it's really thinking forward focused, being really, really forward thinking in how we're approaching this. It came from the legislation when, lab schools really got funded again through our state department. We're held directly under the Virginia Department of Education. So, we have a person that's within the department that we contact for anything that we possibly would need anytime at all. And then, from the higher ed K-12 standpoint, that's the difference in these lab schools and then what you would think of traditionally as a lab school was that it was intentionally made in the legislation that they had to be a partnership between higher ed and K-12. And
Wow.
then knowing that, so you've got that partnership that you're forging together, but knowing that you're doing economic development, workforce development, having industry involved in that is a natural fit. But it's about being able to really navigate multi-stakeholder partnerships and relationships together to make sure that everybody's voice is heard at the table, really get everybody invested in it, and then really making sure that you've got the leadership to put that forward and not be afraid to try things, no matter how crazy and outlandish they might seem at the time. So it takes people that are bold. It takes people that are forward focused in how they're going to learn about things, and it takes people with vision to want that. And I think that we're really blessed where we're at because we have all of those with everyone that we've been in contact with. Right in our network right now, we've got 193 community and industry partners that are aligned with us at the moment. We've got all of the colleges in the university. We're rethinking what teacher preparation looks like and really trying to innovate what that is, because let's be honest with that as well. We can innovate the workforce pipeline, but we also have to start changing what teacher development looks like so that we can create those classrooms for tomorrow for everybody. So, it is not a light lift, folks, but it is the passion of the world. And I think it's needed. I think we're ready. We're at that point, and the work is just so powerful. I don't know how anyone could say no to it.
keep asking, Allie. I know you got more questions.
I
I'm
know.
like,
Ask all the
It's
questions,
yeah.
Jim.
it's so good because like we've had plenty of, like quote unquote, I don't want to say like super siloed, but there's a capacity to a lot of the guests that we have.
Mhm.
And it's to no fault. They just aren't part of a huge network, right? That's really trying to kind of, I think, push the envelope. When I think of disrupt education at like a pretty massive level, this is getting there. Like,
Yeah.
right? Like what Peter and I always are like, where's the bomb in education that could get set off and like, that's what I always thought disrupting education was completely like getting rid of the
Right.
old model. Um, but we've battled this question time and time again, like should it be a ground like top bottom or bottom up
Hmm.
movement? And we ultimately come to it's got to be everybody.
Yeah.
Hmm.
It's got to be everybody. And so how do are you promoting that? I mean, besides like being on this podcast, but like, are you reaching out to other like states, legislators and leadership and being like, hey, we're over here innovating, like we're happy to share. Like, is this like do you get states coming to you to be like, how are you doing
Hmm.
this?
Yeah.
Like we want to do it too.
Yeah, I think that, and know that we're still in, I don't want to say the early stages, but we're still developing, we're still growing. And I think one of the things you have to know too is that, you're going to fail at things and you have to be okay with that.
Hmm.
And you just have to fail faster so that you can make the reward even better and get there faster. So I think that's something that we've learned, but I think that's kind of where the center, and ODU really come into play is that we're able to really network and we have a wider swath, so we're able to go out and tell the story of what we're doing, share. We've done some work with some schools in North Carolina that we've partnered with as well, too, that's local to us, that we learned a ton from. They're innovative and really forward focused and got us to think things. And I think that's how you change things, is it's not about I'm developing on our own or our team is developing on our own. It's that you go and watch, you go and see, you pull some pieces, and then you kind of create what's going to work for your team and then share that out. I think that, well, if you're not sharing the ideas, then they're never going to get out to everybody in the world. And I think I will say that, our first kind of development year, we spent so much time going and visiting who we thought was innovative. We just researched and looked and, oh, this school's really innovative, or oh, this school's really innovative. No matter where that was at, we went to a couple conferences that are all about innovative education and just networked and was like, can we come and see what you're doing? But that's really how you do it. And then we're able to kind of pull that and see, this is a great example that I like to use. Like, when you're like, if you're in education, you go to a conference and you're like, if I can pull back one or two ideas and bring that to my classroom, that would be great. That's wonderful. But if you have a network of people that if we can pull in everybody's one or two or three ideas and bring that together, now we've got 30 ideas that we're able to kind of navigate and leverage what needs to be done and pull those levers so everybody's getting those concepts and it's really able to be shared out widely.
Any more? Allie, I got to, I mean, I'm here. I'm just like, I'm letting her
No,
go,
like,
man. She's got a list.
yeah. Okay, well, this one is one of the interesting phrases that you wrote was, how do you build next practices that transform education at the speed of innovation? Like I was like, that's really interesting because in it, like especially right now in the age of AI, like how do you even keep up?
It's
Oh,
How
going
do
fast. It's going
like
faster.
it's
Right.
going so fast. So like that line was really interesting to me. Like, how do you do that?
yeah.
How do
I
we
mean, it comes at you. One, you have to be open. And I think this is where I'll go back to my band director world. I think you have to be adaptable. You have to be flexible. The way that we kind of talk through ourselves as our team is like, we're a lean startup where you have to be agile and you have to be able to move. And you really have to be able to pivot really quickly because if you get stuck in one spot, you're going to get behind and you're not ever going to catch up. The world's changing rapidly and, every day something's new and AI is just making that even more. So it's really about, you know, communicating with the team, being on the forefront of what's changing, and then not being afraid to make those tweaks as we're going, testing it, rapid prototyping it, and then really pushing that forward and being okay. So, with trial and error, like nothing is going to be perfect, and you have to be okay with that, and then you just have to move forward.
So your recipients of a lot of this is usually the young people, right? The students going through the learners. I'm a business teacher by trade, so I'm just like my clients. But as they go through, how do you prepare them for an agile kind of build in a school? Is there kind of like, hey, are they part of the process, or maybe they are part of the process? Can you tell us a little bit about like maybe some of the students or the learners that are involved, which everybody's learning in a community. And I think we know that like here, but sometimes the students are like, well, I'm at school, so the experts are there and just receiving, but they're part of the process. Can you kind of unpack that?
Yeah, and, one of the things that I learned along in my journey is that learning can really happen anytime, any place, anywhere. And I think that once you get in that mindset, instead of thinking of the typical 8 to 4 every day and just learning's only happening at school, I think that's when you start to transform as an innovator and as an educator. So our groups and our teams, we've got advisory groups of students that have student voice in all of their learning. So they're involved in the process, they're involved in the development of the curriculum. But part of it is that we're embedding internships into what that looks like. It's hands-on, they're being part of NASA Wallops, or they're being part of the maritime trades, at the port. They're being part of the healthcare industry all the time. So them having that voice in that, and then giving the feedback of, this is what we learned, this is what we didn't learn, this is what we like, this is what we didn't like, helps you to tweak that as you're moving forward, because everybody's going to learn it differently. And you got to learn where that sweet spot is so that you're getting the needs for every one of these students as they're moving forward. So it's really, they're part of this process and they have an equal role in this too. And just having we hear build relationships all the time in education, but it's really truly you got to listen to what they need and what their ideas are, because they're the future and they've got a ton of great ideas. I used to say that in my band, okay, when I was a teacher all the time. Kids could tell me everything in the world and we're completely okay with that. And that's how I built relationships. So I mean, to the point that like I just officiated the wedding of one of my former students. Like I still keep tabs on all these kids. They're my kids. So but really they have to feel bought in. They have to feel like they're part of the process, or they're not going to be part of it. And it's just going to be one of those other things that in a couple of years aren't there anymore.
Totally. I mean, if you want people to stay in the community, they have to feel a part of it.
Right.
And that they're like contributing, and the younger the better. 100%. Okay, so this project is growing. It's developing, you're in this real time. So, right, like what if you could vision cast a little bit, like what does this look like in 5 to 10 years? What are the goals for,
What's the
like
next practice?
like what ultimately drives like, like the future growth, or, like what is the bigger vision for the
Mhm.
work that you're doing? If you could just say, whatever you ultimately wanted to have happen, what would that be?
Yeah, so I think where I see this is that I see, we'll start with students and then we'll start a little bit with teachers as well too, because I think they kind of go hand in hand. I mean, it is education. So one, I think that we scale even more. I think there's industries that we've not reached yet. I think that we need to create further pathways for students to be able to develop, and then a larger sharing so that we don't just have these, programs that are in one area or the other. Healthcare, I'll use healthcare as an example. Healthcare is right now in Southwest Virginia because that's the need, but ODU on the other side of the state now has the largest medical school that's, in the Commonwealth. So, I mean, there's a healthcare need here too. There's a STEM need in, Northern Virginia just as much as Southwest Virginia. So they can't just be one off. And kind of our goal in 5 years is that we're scaling these out so that we've got these schools in all locations. So every student in the Commonwealth, no matter where they live and what zip code, has the same opportunities. With teachers, I think where we see things going is that they aren't just learning about pedagogy and how their instructions are going to go, but they're getting these hands-on opportunities too, so that when they're in the classroom and they're teaching this to students, it's not because they've seen it, it's because they've done it. And getting them invested in, instead of doing PD over the summer, that they're coming in, they're listening, they're learning. How do we get them into an externship or internship with the industries that we partner with, so that they see the process too, they're part of that process, and then they're bringing what they learn back into the classroom. It's all about learning for everyone and bringing those lived experiences back together, and that's how we change things. It's really about what you learn, what you know, and then expanding that.
I love it. Yes. Um,
So good.
in this entire project and in the time that you've been working there, what are you most proud of, man? I know that's a loaded question. There's probably more
There's
than one, but
there's so many things that I'm most
yeah.
proud of. I think that we are creating systems of change, and we're really creating systems that are going to meet the needs of students in the future. I could tell you all the trite things like I learned how to build websites, and I learned how to do all kinds of other crazy things.
Hmm.
But at the end of the day, this is about kids. This is not about and it's about us being able to build systems that are going to prepare kids for to meet the needs and meet the moment that they're going to have when they go out into the world, into the workforce. So that to me is really what I'm most proud of, and changing the system. Really, I was the one that came up with that question of how is this different?
Yeah.
Because people really, it used to drive them crazy because they were like, we know, we want to know what's different. And I'm like, "Oh." So,
What is one of the things, I mean, and this was I had this other question as well. Like, I love that. How is this different? Because it's such a powerful question. And thank you for coming up with that and bugging people, because change is a lot of people, and I know that Allie now will likely talk a little bit about this on next week's podcast, but change is scary for a lot of people. And but it's so invigorating. I mean, I think it's the core of life. But so what is one of the biggest things that you said that you've seen with your team has put out there that, wow, this is really different and it works?
um, I think just the way that we're able to, the communication factor, I think, is what I've learned. I will tell you, like, what I've learned is that there's a different way of communicating at the higher ed level, and then there is at the K-12 level, that there is in the, in the, the private industry, business and industry sector. So I think our team being able to really come together and bridge that, and then see it happen live in action when we have, these design jams, as we call them, where we've got not just educators, but, you've got an elementary teacher and a high school principal and somebody that works on a shipyard and somebody that's in policy, that's working legislatively, all coming together and doing like they're working on improv, and they're really adding on top of each other. And
Mhm.
then at the end of it, you've got this great grand idea that now everybody's bought into. So I think that framework is really, one of the things that I'm most proud of that our teams have been able to do. And then also just identifying this, again, you kind of talked about we work in these, everybody's got these innovative ideas, but connecting them together. I mean, we have a large summit that's an innovation summit in the spring every year. Now we had our first one this year. Brought on like over like right at 250 people that were innovative, not just within the lab schools, but across the state.
Mhm.
We had some people that were across the country, but it's identifying that, bringing those together, and having them talk and communicate and share, and then take back. So
Love it. Love it.
Yeah, that.
Allie, final thoughts.
Oh man, final thoughts. There's so many thoughts. I was in the 3+ years of podcasting together. I knew at some point we would find an organization that, like, in my mind, is like really striving to disrupt education, like, and bringing all these pieces that we've been talking about together. Like, and it's not perfect, and you're still building it, but a thank you for reaching out, Gary, and sharing like this work. It's so needed, and I know our listeners and like all of our past guests that are like, oh, this is the next level of what we could do and how to like bring all these pieces together. It's really, really exciting.
Yeah.
Really, really exciting to hear that there is a state like really unified in bringing, it seems like, all of the areas together to build these really strong communities, because ultimately that's like what it's about, is investing in the community that you're planted in and growing that, and expanding that work. So
Mhm.
I'm really excited to see what the Virginia network, lab school network, and then ODU keeps doing, because this is pushing the envelope for sure.
100%. Any like kind of last things that we've missed, Gary, that you're like, hey man, I really need to say this. And also I wanted to ask you, how do people connect with you? How do people connect with the lab school and the entire organization?
yeah, so that's a great question. They can always visit our website, oduceio.org. That's oduceio.org. I know I have a Southern accent, so sometimes I have to slow down. You're more than welcome to, I mean, they can email me too. My email address is on the website, so I won't like put that. I mean, it's probably easier if they go to the website. So that would be one good way. And then, follow us there. We try to do things. We've got socials as well too. We're on LinkedIn. We're on Facebook. We're on what is X now, not Twitter, even though I like to call it Twitter sometimes, it's X. So following us there is great. The Center for Educational Innovation and Opportunity at ODU. And then, just keep following us. As far as adding anything, I think, I don't know that I can ever overestimate. I don't think I can overstate that, this is powerful work in that, when you first start something, you don't think it's ever going to be where you need it to go, but it's those tiny changes every day that you make and pushing yourself forward and working with a team that's on that. Like, you got to have the team that believes in that and that says, try it, let's do it, let's move forward. You do that and you're working for kids every day. There's no way that you can ever go wrong.
Awesome. So this will be when this is out, when you're hearing us, it'll be kind of into the fall of 2025. You have something in the spring, it looks like, of 26 where you kind of collaborate. Is that beyond the state of Virginia, and do you welcome other schools there, or no?
So we might.
We might. Okay.
I would recommend that you check our website to make sure.
Sure.
We do have some space limitations because we are on a campus, so we can't have thousands of people. But
of course,
I'm not opposed to it. I don't think the university is opposed to it either. I think anytime that you're trying to bring innovative minds and thought partners together, where can you go wrong? But if we need to get a bigger space, we need to get a bigger space. So
yes. I like that. In contact. I think that's what we're all about here at Disrupt Education is just amplifying, the bigger connecting of ideas and such. And I love the systems of change. That to me is a quote. I kind of want to put that on a shirt. But Gary, I want to thank you so much for sharing. You're doing some powerful work. You're bringing clarity to where there's a lot of muddling in education and communities and workforce innovation and all those other acronyms that we hear. And really do appreciate it. And I'm just going to echo a little bit off of Allie. When I started this podcast 10 years ago, it was all about, I'm going to change education. And I quickly found that I can't do anything without team networking and things like that. So thank you for kind of sharing your story. And kudos to your entire, I'll call them the mighty team. I like mighty team, and appreciate you sharing it. So thank you so much for being here with us on the Disrupt Education podcast.
Thanks so much for having me. I will come back anytime.
All right. We may have you back. So for Allie Dull, I'm Peter Hostrasser. Thank you all for listening. We'll catch you next time on the Disrupt Education podcast.
Thank you for joining us on the Disrupt Education podcast. If you found today's conversation valuable, we'd appreciate it if you subscribed and shared it with someone on their own learning journey. We're also excited to announce our new career coaching services, where you can work directly with Peter and Allie to clarify your path and showcase your unique value. Visit disrupteducationpodcast.com to learn more. Until next time, keep questioning, keep growing, and keep disrupting education.